Hey guys, good evening to you, good afternoon, wherever you are in the world. We are live now. A little bit of a technical difficulty getting this show up on the road. But that's to be expected. That happens with live. It never goes smoothly. But we're here and I'm glad you're here with me now because we're going to talk about how to build products that your customers will love. So that's what we're talking about today. How do you do it? How do you build a product that customers will love, not just like? How do you know what type of product to build? How can you build that in the lowest risk possible? How can you MVP that minimum viable product? We're going to talk about that all today. So, what's the running order? There's a chat box. If you found it, the chat box is on the right-hand side on YouTube Live. If you're watching this on recorded archive, you won't see a chat box, but it's there. It's on the right-hand side. If there's anything you want to ask during this webinar, then feel free to put that in the right-hand side. Ask me a question. I'll do my best to answer those as we go along. And if you like it, if you like what I'm sharing with you today, then feel free to give me a like. Just hit the like button. What that will do is, that will let me know that you like it, give me some feedback, bit of interaction as well, but it will help other entrepreneurs discover this webinar because that's how YouTube works, right? If you like it, then people in your network will discover it as well and be useful to them. So I appreciate that. If you find this content useful, I know you're spending your time with me now, but it's free. You can give me a like. That will help get it out and help other people discover it. And if you also like the content, then go and check out up.school.io. There's courses there. There's free courses. If you're an entrepreneur, go and check out up.school.io. Free courses to help you start your business, as well as some premium courses as well. We'll give you in-depth, studies, analysis, tools to help you grow your business. So what I'll do is when I finish this webinar, as with all the webinars I do every week here on Wednesday, I put those webinars onto my premium courses so you can go and access that, get the archive. But as I said, there's free courses there as well where you can go and just learn some basic stuff. Like, for example, book reviews. I've been doing a whole bunch of book reviews over the last few weeks. Great books for entrepreneurs to help grow your business. That's for free. Go and check it out. So, well, thank you for joining me here today. It's been a crazy few weeks for me. I spent the last 3 weeks in hospital. If you've been following my daily live video blog right here on YouTube, you may have caught that a few weeks back I said that I would have to go into hospital very soon. I was in Japan at the time. I had to go back to UK to go into hospital. Fortunately, it wasn't me going into hospital. It was my mom going into hospital. So I had to go back to the UK. I spent the last 3 weeks in hospital with my mom, who was very sick. And, what that taught me was a couple of things. Firstly, about the importance of being a lifestyle entrepreneur. And I talk a bit more about this in my blog post, my video blog today. You might want to go and check that out. If you're interested in what being a lifestyle entrepreneur is all about, then go and check that out. It's a blog post. It says 3 things. I'm just having a look at it now. 3 things I learned from 3 weeks in hospital. Go and check that out. It's all about what a lifestyle entrepreneur is all about. And it's not just about living the dream. It's also about having choice. So what it also taught me as well, last 3 weeks in hospital, is something that one of my favorite business authors, Seth Godin, asks, and this is a real measure of whether or not people love what you do. And he said, will people miss you when you're gone? So what I want to do is ask you that question about your business. Will people miss you when you're gone? I'm not talking about when you go into heaven, in the sky, or down into the earth, whatever you believe. I'm talking about when you don't publish your blog post or your video, or you don't share your podcast, or you don't do that event. Will people miss it? So whatever it is that you do, whatever product or service that you have, the real measure of whether or not people love what you do is whether or not people will miss it when it's not there. That's the difference between being loved and liked. And that's what I want to talk about today. And that is how you can look at your own business and say, well, if people don't miss what you do, then all you're doing is you're trying to compete to be the cheapest possible product or service out there, and that's a race to the bottom. That's not a game really that you want to be involved in as a lifestyle entrepreneur. That may be okay if you're a Walmart, but that's not what this webinar is about, not for those kind of entrepreneurs. It's about creating something that means something to somebody in their lives, and that's what lifestyle entrepreneurialism is all about, and that's how you measure it. Will people miss you when you're gone? And what I want to share with you today is how you can build a product or service where people will miss you, such that when you don't do what it is that you do, there's a hole in their lives, in their day. Maybe that was the 15 minutes where they go and read your blog post, or maybe that was the 15 minutes that they watch your video, or maybe Wednesday evenings was the event that they went to that you held, or whatever it is, or that phone call that you used to have with your customers. If that then isn't there anymore and people miss that, then you are creating a product or service that people love, and that really helps you create value and freedom in your life. And I want to talk about how you can do that today. So let's talk about why I am here sharing this with you. And this is a book that I was a co-author of. This is the book here. And something that I've worked on for many, many years. I worked 15 years in marketing. And a few years ago, two of my colleagues and I published this book, which is called Brand Love: How to Build a Brand Worth Talking About. And really, this was to help companies. This was aimed at big companies, telecoms companies, IT companies, brands. How could they not create a brand that was liked, but a brand that was loved, such that people would get out there and share that brand story with their networks? And the kind of brands that we worked with, and the brands that I worked with over the last 15 years, the brands that we worked with in this book, so the brands that people really love, the brands like Starbucks, the brands like Apple, the brands like GoPro, these kind of brands which everybody knows, but they have so many competitors. And a great example of that is, think of Lego as an example. That's a brand that people love, absolutely love that brand. How much money do parents and grandparents spend on Lego? And what's really interesting about Lego is we live in a digital era, but one of the, if not the most successful toy brand in the world makes plastic bricks in a world where kids are using iPads and online games and everything. Plastic bricks are the most successful and most loved brand in the world for kids. How is that possible? What's really interesting about that is it's even more possible when you think about the competition. Think about Lego's competition, right? There are companies in China making cheap knockoff plastic bricks that look identical to Lego. But why is it that grandparents buy Lego and not the cheap Chinese knockoffs, which they can buy in? If you bought Lego recently, you know how expensive this stuff is, right? So why don't they go and buy the cheap Chinese knockoffs? The reason is brand love. The reason is because people love the brand. So what does it mean to this? What does it mean to us? You might not be $1 billion company like Lego. However, you are trying to build a relationship with your customers. So what can you learn here this evening about brand love, and what can we learn from brands like Lego about how they develop relationships with customers? Well, we know that if you don't have a product or service that people love, it's very difficult to get the attention of your customers. And B, what happens is that you then reduce your product or service to price. So you start competing on price. And that's never an interesting or exciting game to be in. You never wake up in the morning thinking, yes, I'm going to offer the cheapest possible service or product out there. You want a service that moves people, a service or product that gets people to email you and say, hey, I absolutely loved what you did. Not the fact that you were the cheapest. So what I want to share with you today, some of the insights from 15 years of working with these brands, as well as the insights from many of the companies that I work with, both as a startup mentor, as an investor, is how a small company or a single entrepreneur like yourself can create a product or service that people love, and how they can do that without spending millions and millions on advertising. So this is what we're going to look at today. 3 things that I want to focus on. This is going to be a short webinar today. So just to give you a heads up on what the key messages are. Logic and emotion, the importance of understanding the difference when you create a product. Why you need to mine where the gold is. Why you don't have to go and change the world with your app or your service. And MVP, minimum viable product. How to build a product that your customers will love in the fastest possible time, the least possible money, and the least possible risk. So let's talk about logic and emotion. Now, here's an interesting thing. People buy on emotion and justify with logic. And what I mean by that, and this is, real marketing speak now, but this is what it means to you, is it means that what your customers say or what you think people buy from you often isn't what they really buy from you. Okay, that sounds a bit confusing, but let me explain in easier terms. Starbucks. So here's the interesting thing about Starbucks. What does Starbucks sell? Most people will say Starbucks sells coffee. But if that's the case, then why not get coffee at McDonald's? Because it's cheaper and faster. McDonald's serves coffee a heck of a lot faster than Starbucks, and it's 40 to 50% cheaper than Starbucks. So why go to Starbucks? Well, the reason is because people love Starbucks and they're not buying coffee. This is the difference between emotion and logic. Let me explain. Logically, Starbucks is selling coffee. That's the logic of what they do. Starbucks and McDonald's both sell coffee. That's the physical aspect of what you do. However, the emotion is very different. Starbucks doesn't sell coffee. If you look at it, Starbucks sells space. Bear with me a second. Now, Howard Schultz, the CEO of Starbucks, says that Starbucks is the social space. It is the third space, the third place between work and home. The third place is Starbucks. And if you look at where Starbucks came from Seattle. And Seattle was, of all the cities in the US in the 90s when Starbucks started up, it was the biggest city for inbound migration within the US. So what was happening in Seattle was a lot of young people were moving to Seattle from all over the US in the 90s. What does that mean? It meant a lot of young people uprooted and unplugged, going to Seattle for a new city, looking for a community to plug into. They were looking for space. They were looking for a place to connect. If you look at where the most profitable Starbucks franchise is in the world, it's right here in Japan. And the reason why Starbucks is the most successful in Japan is because the Japanese consumer has the least space of all. Starbucks is the only place really where people can go where they can feel part of something. They can get away from work and home. So Starbucks doesn't sell coffee at the emotional level. Starbucks sells space. That's the emotion. And the interesting thing is that what Starbucks really sells is a solution to loneliness of the modern customer. That's the emotional aspect of it. You don't go to a customer and ask them, why do you buy Starbucks? Because they're going to tell you coffee. But the real reason is because the modern consumer is lonely. They need a place to go where they can feel at home, and Starbucks is that. So what does that mean to you as a lifestyle entrepreneur? Well, basically it means this. It means that think about your product or service in 2 ways, logic and emotion. If you think about logic only, so for example, if you are offering some kind of coaching service, or you are offering some kind of skill development for photographers, or you are selling an app, this is all the logic of what you sell. And if that's the case, if you only understand what the logic is of what you sell, you will only ever be able to compete on price with the next McDonald's or whatever it is in your category. So you're competing with McDonald's, who's going to be faster, more efficient, and cheaper than what you offer. However, if you understand what the emotion is of what you sell, that's below the surface of the water, then you don't have to compete on price, and you can develop a product that customers love. And where you can start with emotion is really looking at pain points. So when you think about your product or service, often entrepreneurs get lost on thinking about the great things about what the product or the service is. So they think about features like how fast it is, how much memory it is, how cool it is, and so on. But really what I want you to think about is, what is the problem that you're trying to solve? And if you really want to create a product that customers love, focus on pain points. Pain points meaning that what is the problem that your customer has on an everyday basis? And how are you trying to solve that problem? Now, you don't need to change the world. You don't need a game-changing app. You don't need the next Facebook to create a product that customers love. You just need to focus on simple, everyday solutions. So my question to you tonight is this: as a lifestyle entrepreneur, what is the problem that you're solving in your customer's life? And if you don't know your customer, and if you don't know what problems that they have, what pain that they're feeling, then what I want you to do is to maybe go back and think about the customer as you, because you are your best first customer. If you can solve your own problem that you face on a daily basis, then chances are there are many other customers out there just like you who also have that problem. And that's where you can create a product or brand that people love, by solving a simple everyday problem that people like you have. Now, some people call this scratching your own itch, and that's a great way to develop a product or service that customers love. You don't have to go and develop a $1 billion app to create an interesting business, that's something that's exciting, that's worthwhile, that creates value. You just have to solve a problem, an everyday problem. And this is something I think about when I built my own business. Take a look at up.school as an example. One of the things that I do in up.school is I run a regular weekly mastermind. And a mastermind is a group of entrepreneurs who get together online, often via Skype, and we discuss business challenges together via Skype, via video call on a weekly basis. Every week we get together, entrepreneurs from around the world, a group come together, and they look at each other's business challenges and they help each other, give advice, challenge each other as well, challenge their assumptions, not always agree with them, give them some different perspectives and so on. Now, for me, that was scratching my own itch. If you're a lifestyle entrepreneur, one of the challenges, one of the pain points, I say in air quotes, that you may have is that you work on your own. Now, when you worked in the office, when you had your salaried career life, you were surrounded by other co-workers, right? And that was a good thing, because you had inspiration, you had peer group support, you had motivation, ideas, and so on. Now, when you're an entrepreneur working on your own, it's a little bit different, isn't it? Now you're on your own. Who are those people? Now, you could be in your home office, you could be in a co-working space, but ultimately you're alone, and you don't have people that you can talk to about your business challenges. Yeah, you may have people, you may have a designer that designs your website, you may have a developer, you may have somebody that builds your app, somebody that you outsource to, a virtual assistant, and so on. But these are not people that you can have meaningful conversations about your product, your service, and your business. So, scratching my own itch, I looked at that and I looked around me and I saw that if I could solve this problem for myself, chances are there were entrepreneurs just like me out there who also had that problem. And that was the case. So right now I'm running 3 mastermind groups for people who, just like me, lifestyle entrepreneurs who also have this problem, this pain point, which is a problem we have on a daily basis, which is, as an entrepreneur, you're on your own. So a great way to solve a business problem and create a product that customers love is to scratch your own itch. It's as simple as that. You know better than anybody else what your problems are. And you can see it on the emotional level, not the logical level. So a great way to start, think about a problem that you're solving. If you're not solving a problem in your business, then why the hell are you in business? Let's move on. Mind where the gold is. And, I work a lot with startups. I mentor startup entrepreneurs. I invest in startups. I work in mastermind groups, like I just said to you. And one of the biggest challenges I see beset entrepreneurs is that they think they need to be original. They think that they need to create a product that some way is a groundbreaking product, that there's no competition out there. What I want to talk to you about today is the importance of validating your ideas first. And one way to do that is to ask this question, what are people paying for already? And this really means mining where the gold is. Now, let me put it this way. If you're having a conversation with somebody and you're talking about your business idea, and that person says to you, wow, Facebook's already doing that, or Amazon's doing that, or these guys over here are already doing that, it tends to be that entrepreneurs react to that and think, oh shit, that's a bad idea. Somebody's already thought of it. I have to think of something else. However, as an investor, if an entrepreneur came to me and said that they had no competition, rather than think of that as wow, here's the next Facebook, here's the next $1 billion app, I get worried, because the last thing I want to do is invest in a business where there is no market for it. Because chances are that if you have no competition, then you have to go out and develop a whole market by yourself. And that is an extremely expensive business. So rather than try and be original, try and be better than what is already out there. And I'll come to what that actually is in a minute. So if you want to create a product that people love, you don't have to be original. Don't feel the pressure that you need to create something that nobody else has done. Because if you have no competition, chances are you have no market. So one way to do that is to validate your ideas properly. And one of the things I talk about in my courses in up.school, and you can go and look at up.school, there's some free courses there, as I said, and there's also some premium courses. In the premium courses, I talk about idea validation. And you can use techniques like, for example, Google keyword analysis, or you can use tools like Quora, or you can use Typeform to survey people, Google Trends. There's a whole bunch of tools that you can use, and I share these on my courses, that you can validate your ideas. And really what that means is you can test whether or not that idea already exists in the market. Because what you don't want to do is build a business on an idea that's new. It's extremely risky. Gone are the days, like if we go back 20 or 30 years into .com days, everybody was talking about first mover advantage, that kind of stuff, right? Now, you want to wait and see somebody else go and develop the market for you. If you want proof, look at Google. Google was not the first search engine out there, right? Think of all the search engines that came before Google. There was Yahoo, Excite, Hotbot, AltaVista, Lycos, hundreds of search engines that came before Google. What Google did was simply go in and do a better job of what these guys were doing and what they were doing wrong, importantly. They saw that these search engines were creating really noisy directories. Google went in and said, screw that. We're going to create something that people love. And to do that, we're going to focus on what doesn't work with what's already out there. So my advice to you is, if you want to create a product that people love, don't bet on developing a market. If your name is Elon Musk or Richard Branson or somebody like Mark Zuckerberg, sure, you can bet on developing a market. You can do this big visionary thing, where you walk around the events and talk about game-changing apps and how you're going to redefine this market and that market and completely disrupt that and so on. However, if your name is not any of the above that I just mentioned, forget it, because you will be spending millions, if not billions of dollars on educating customers, redefining distribution relationships within your business and so on. It's an extremely expensive and extremely high-risk business, so I really wouldn't recommend it. Focus on what works already and do a better job. An example of this is take Richard Branson. He didn't invent air travel. He didn't have to go out and teach customers how to get on a plane or buy a ticket or get a passport or go to the airport. He didn't need to do any of that. It already existed. In fact, people have been doing it for decades before Richard Branson came along and said, actually, that's a pretty damn crappy experience. We're going to copy that, but make it better. So my advice, if you want to create a product that customers love, copy what already works and out-execute. And that really means find what people are already paying for and do a better job. And you can do a better job simply, not necessarily by being more efficient or faster, but you can do a better job by being more human. If you're a lifestyle entrepreneur, you'll always be one or two people in a small team. You may ask, how can I compete with somebody like an Amazon or, any kind of huge service company who is already doing what you might be thinking of doing, or even a larger company that may not be as established as Amazon, but is doing what you're doing. You can look at what they do and think, how can I make this experience more human? And you can make it more human because it's you. You can be more vulnerable, more authentic than a company because you're an individual. So one way of out executing is to make your experience more human, and that is what customers ultimately love at the end of the day. I'll talk a bit more about this in my courses. I just sort of touch on it today. Out execute. Don't try and be original. That has killed many businesses. So one of the things you really should think about, and I'll talk a little bit about the book in which this comes from in a minute, is usefulness, not innovation. So entrepreneurs get caught on this innovation thing that they think to create a product that customers love, they have to be really innovative. But what I found, from my many years of working in marketing, and especially in technology, and also investing and advising startups, mentoring entrepreneurs, is that what customers really love is not necessarily innovation, but usefulness. And that really comes back to that whole point of solving an everyday problem. If you can do that, it doesn't matter if you're using the latest technology or if you're the fastest or whatever. It just matters that you're being useful and you're creating a solution that somebody needs right here, right now. And let me just refer to this book, The $100 Startup, which I have here, which I thoroughly recommend. If you haven't read this book, go out and get this book. I don't know how much it costs in your country, but whatever it costs, the investment in that book will be paid back many times. And one of the reasons why is there are many lessons in that book. One of the lessons I want to share with you today is this whole idea of value and freedom. And if you want to create a business that gives you freedom in your lifestyle, and that's probably why you're here as a lifestyle entrepreneur with me here right now. And this sort of goes back to my experience in the hospital earlier that I started off with tonight. If you want to create a business that gives you freedom, choice, then you need to focus on value. The more value that you create, the more freedom you will have. Let me explain. Value means usefulness. So the more useful that you are to a customer, a client, the more freedom you can have. And what I mean by freedom, it can be very basic things like, for example, not having to have an office, not having to hide behind some PR bullshit, not having to wear a suit and tie, not having to rock up and start work at 8:30 in the morning, not having to, having a corporate facade or whatever it is that ties people down, or being based in a capital city near your customers. These things that take freedom away from us as entrepreneurs. Rather, you can have choice. So, for example, if you can be really useful to somebody, if you can create value in your customer's life, it doesn't matter that you're doing it on a laptop in a beach in Thailand. Doesn't matter that you're doing it in a pair of flip-flops. Doesn't matter that you're there on the Skype call with them in a t-shirt, in obviously your back room, in the house, in the home office. It doesn't matter, because if you're creating value, people don't care. They actually want that more human, more authentic experience. So it's going back to creating usefulness. If you want to create products that customers love, focus on value. And by focusing on value, you can create freedom. That's the ultimate goal of the lifestyle entrepreneur, freedom. So it comes from value comes from usefulness, and usefulness comes from not necessarily being original, but solving a problem that your customers have on a daily basis. So lastly, finishing up, I want to share with you some insights into how to build a minimum viable product. Because if you want to create a product that customers love, you have to MVP it. Minimum viable product. So if you've read books like this, if you've read books like The Lean Startup, you'll be familiar with what a minimum viable product is. I'll talk a bit about what a minimum viable product is in a minute and why you need to know about it. So let's start here. You're going to create a product. Let's say, as we can see here, in the top section, you're trying to create a car, something that your customer will love. The traditional way of doing this, as seen in the sequence 1, 2, 3, 4, is to build the car slowly. And what entrepreneurs do, and the mistake that many entrepreneurs make, is they start by building the product out from the base up and take a long time to get the product right and then launch. This may be in a matter of months. I've seen people take years to launch a product. That is absolutely the wrong thing to do. You should not be taking months or even years developing a product. You should be developing and launching your product in days or maybe weeks. And if you need help with that, I'll talk about this in the next slide. 7-Day Startup by Dan Norris. So I'll come to that in a minute. But before we do that, minimum viable product, rather than build out a product and get the product right, rather than wait for perfect, what you should be focusing on, if you want to create a product that customers love, what you need to do is start with a minimum version of your product possible that a customer is willing to pay for. So let's say you're building an app. Rather than get the app completely right, then what you should do is you should scale the app right back, strip out all the features, and focus on the one feature that somebody would be willing to pay money for and launch that. Let's say you're developing an online course or some kind of education product for your customers. Rather than get all 10 weeks together, which, that kind of content takes a lot of time, what you should do is just do the first week and sell that. Because the thing is, what minimum viable products tell us and what we learn from this process is two things. Firstly, are people willing to pay for this? If nobody's willing to pay for the first part, then what you do is you save yourself 10 weeks developing that online course or a year developing that app, whatever it may be. You save yourself a lot of time. And secondly, what you also do is you get yourself into the game really fast and you learn. As it says here on the book, you don't learn until you launch. By building in a minimum viable product, you get to learn what your customers love really quick. the worst situation, the last thing you should be doing, and if you want any kind of advice to take away from today's webinar, is you spend minimum amount of time possible building your product. Ask yourself, okay, right, just clear all your expectations about building the product off the table and ask yourself this question. If I could build and launch this product in 7 days, what would it look like? What are the minimum things that I need to launch this product in 7 days and get somebody to pay for it? And if you say to me, it's absolutely impossible, it's impossible, I can't do that in 7 days, I'll ask you this again. Okay, you might tell me it's impossible based on your current expectations within seven days, but what would it look like if you could launch it in 7 days? And that challenges your expectations completely. And entrepreneurs freak out about this. Some of them panic. But, that whole freaking out process sheds the weight of expectations that holds entrepreneurs back. It throws you out of your comfort zone. You get comfortable. You are comfortable there building a product for weeks and months and years. And you get into that comfort zone. You never have to face that moment of truth, game time, which is launching your product and putting it in front of your customer and say, here, now, will you buy it from me? And entrepreneurs often dodge this question. And what they do is they get into that comfort zone because it means they never have to ask for the money. But if you want to be a successful entrepreneur, you've got to ask for the money. So let me talk a little bit about this book. Another book that I recommend to you. So there's 2 books to you today that I recommend that you get because you will get your money's worth many times over on these books. 7-Day Startup, the $100 Startup. Talk about the 7-Day Startup now. And by the way, there's a free course on up.school which reviews all of these books. So, if you want to go and check it out and find out a few more books like this, go to up.school, go and check out the free 5 books that I recommend for entrepreneurs. Go and join that course. Absolutely free. Book reviews, and if you like them, go and buy the books. I have no relationship to these authors whatsoever. These are books that I recommend and I'm passionate about. So, what it does in the 7-Day Startup, what Dan Norris, the author, shares with us is the idea, the difference between an entrepreneur and a wantrepreneur. So, what an entrepreneur does is focus on the activities that bring customers. What a wantrepreneur does is focus on the activities that are comfortable. So, what are those activities? And you might think, I'm not a wantrepreneur. But, the reality is that we're all a bit wantrepreneur. And some of us more than others. And the challenge is not whether or not entrepreneur or wantrepreneur. The challenge is trying to move ourselves up the entrepreneur scale away from the wantrepreneur. Don't be the wantrepreneur, because the wantrepreneur spends weeks, months doing shit that really doesn't matter because they think it matters. They think it's activity. So one of the things I want you to take away from today is this idea that nothing happens until you ship. And shipping means getting your product into the hands of a customer, a paying customer. Because you know what? Until you have a paying customer, you don't have a business. So it's all very well to go to meetups, networking events, and talk about your ideas and talk about, how you're launching your business and so on. But it doesn't mean anything. You don't have a business until you have a customer. Even if that customer pays $1, you're not in business. So if you were to look at this slide here, the way I've broken this down between on the left-hand side, pre-shipping, and on the right-hand side, post-shipping, if you want one bit of advice to take away and work on today, it's this. Look at that list of everything on the left-hand side, pre-shipping, and look at what's on the right-hand side, post-shipping. And my advice to you would be this, and you can take it or leave it, it's up to you. But if you want something that will have the biggest possible impact in the least possible time, what I would suggest to you is this. Take that list on the left-hand side and do as less of that as possible. Take what's on the right-hand side and focus all your time on that. So, website, logos, all that stuff is crap. It doesn't matter. People think that you need this stuff. Oh, I need to get business cards. You don't need business cards, right? You don't need an office. You don't need anything here to have a business. If you want to create a product that customers love, all you need to do is get that product into your hand of your customer, even if it's an MVP. It could be a $1 product. Even if you want to sell for $1,000 in the future, just get it into the hands of the customer, start learning. Everything else is what entrepreneurs do. So you might say, oh, I can't do that because I need a website. You don't need a website. I have gone to customers and I've sold an idea without a product, without a website. In fact, without anything on the left-hand side. I didn't have any social media presence, didn't have a team, didn't have a logo, didn't even have a name of a company, no website. All the rest I didn't have. But I went to customers and I said, look, this is what I want to do. I understand your problem because we've talked about it before. I understand your pain point and I have a solution. I haven't quite built the solution yet, but together we can build the solution. And I want you to pay me $10 for that solution, which is a lot less than what I'm going to charge when I launch this in public. And I'll talk about this in a minute and how you can do that. So my point is you don't need anything on the left-hand side to be in business. And it's all a distraction. It's all something that prevents you from being a successful entrepreneur. It's bullshit, honestly. It holds you back. Spend a minimum amount of time possible on the left-hand side. Sure, you're going to need some of this in time. But before you have a paying customer, keep your focus on the left-hand side to less than 10%, maybe 5% of your time. You might be thinking, shit, that's impossible. But that's your decision. If you want to be an entrepreneur or entrepreneur, that's the decision you've got to take. And that scares a lot of entrepreneurs, right? I mean, it's not just us lifestyle entrepreneurs that need to focus on this. Like Zappos, which... if you don't have Zappos in your country, Zappos is a hugely successful online retailer bought by Amazon for something like $800 million in cash. The CEO of Zappos, Tony Hsieh, has written some really good books. He wrote a book called In Search of Happiness. He writes some really sort of existential books that you don't expect normal business leaders to write. Young guy. He built Zappos, which was initially a shoe retailer. And, the first version of Zappos that they put out there, they didn't even have any shoes. So what they did was they created a minimum viable product of their own service, and it's called a Wizard of Oz MVP, and I'll tell you why in a minute. What they did was they put up a dummy website. They put up all the shoes that were for sale, and they tested whether or not customers would buy shoes from this website. Now, here's the thing, is that they didn't have any of the shoes that they said that they had. But what they were doing is when people were going on and buying a pair of Kickers or buying a pair of Birkenstock, what they then did was they would phone up or go to the local shoe store and go and buy those shoes, or they would go to Amazon and buy them, or whoever had those shoes. They would then mail them to the customer and they would make no money on it. So you're thinking, why the hell would you do that? Why would you create that kind of service? Because you can't scale it. You're going to probably lose money once you factor in time. And there's all kinds of risks involved. What happens if you can't then get it from the retailer? But the reason you're doing this, it goes back to the point of learning. You don't learn until you launch. Now, the purpose of building an MVP, the purpose is to learn what customers love. And by doing this, by building a dummy store, what Zappos was able to do was understand what customers loved. They weren't focused on building an inventory. They weren't focused on building a logistics back end like Amazon. They weren't focused on any of that because it was a distraction. All they wanted to know was what do customers like and how can we make that better? And once they started developing that, then they could focus on the other stuff which cost money, right? But the main thing at the beginning was to learn what customers love. And this is called the Wizard of Oz MVP because, like the Wizard of Oz, the whole experience is on the outside, not what happens on the inside. So in this case, a customer went to the Zappos website, bought shoes, thought they were buying it from a normal online retailer and that would get delivered to them. But actually what was happening behind the scenes was nothing was automated. There's people running around like crazy, making phone calls, running to the store, getting on their bikes and cycling to the shoe retailer, packaging it individually and so on. That's what the Wizard of Oz was. It's all these kind of manual operations behind the scenes. But that's the point. It's not about scale at this stage. It's about learning what customers love. And you can do that as well. If you're offering a service and you're thinking, oh, wow, how can I do this? How can I scale this? How can I, it's all right if I can do this individually, or, I don't understand how I can automate this. It doesn't matter. Don't think about automating it right now. Just think about doing it as a concierge type service now, and then worry about automating it later on. Because if you can make money out of the concierge, you can then automate it later on and make more profit. The second hack, which I said I'd share with you, is the MVP hack, which is the 10 by 10 hack, which is really, borrows from the advice here in the 7-Day Startup. It's really, really simple, this one. It's like, start with your ecosystem of the people that you know and pitch 10 people your product idea. You don't even need a product or a website. Your solution to their everyday problem, and ask them for $10. Now, when I did this, I pitched 14 people and I got 14 people to pay me $10, which I was pretty happy with. Now, the final product price is more than 10 times that. But the reason I was able to charge them $10 and get them on board was I was saying to them, look, I don't need $10 from you. I don't need that kind of money. But I want you to help me grow this. And I'm not going to give this to you for free, because if you get it for free, you won't value it. And therefore, I'm not going to get any good feedback. But if you paid $10, you've made a commitment, you want to get some kind of, there's a relationship there. You want to make sure that you get your money's worth and more out of it. So that's one thing you can do to get into the game really quickly. You don't need a product. You don't need a website for anything. And you can grow your product or service with your customers and learn what they love, because you've set out with that expectation. You set the precedence early on that you want their feedback to make this work. So that's one idea. I mean, if you want more examples of this, go to up.school and check out my courses, because there are many other examples of MVPs. I've only shared with you 2 MVP examples today, but there are many other ways that you can launch an MVP and learn what customers love. So just finishing up today, if you like what I shared with you today, hit the like button. That really helps people discover it, and it will help get this message out there. And if you're interested in any of the courses that I talked about today, go to up.school.io and check it out. If the premium course, Entrepreneur Upgrade, for March, if you want to get $100 off that course, use this coupon here, MAR47. That will reduce the price from $147 to $47. That will give you 16 weeks of lessons, insights to help you become a better entrepreneur. So some of the lessons that I talked about today, everything from validating your ideas to building minimum viable products to how to become financially and creatively free, how to manage your time, productivity hacks, how to become more creative, how to become more motivated, all round, all the things you need to become a better entrepreneur. That's in the upgrade course. That's the link there if you want to get $100 off. Only for March. That's the coupon that you need to use. And finally, go and check out up.school.io, because there are courses there for free, especially the book reviews. Some of the books that I shared with you today, these 3 books off the bat, there's a few more in my pile here. These 3 books here, they are in my the 5 books that will make you a better entrepreneur course. That's free. Go and check it out on up.school.io, which is basically just 5 video reviews of each of these books with the key lessons from each one. You know, in each one of these, I mean, just one of these books, if you were to read or just watch the video review of just one of these books, I guarantee you're going to get value, which will make you become a better entrepreneur. And you only have to spend 10 minutes. 10 minutes, you can watch one of these video reviews and become a better entrepreneur. How about that? That saves you hours and hours and hours of banging your head against the wall trying to do it yourself. You know, borrow from the wisdom of these business authors. There's a whole bunch of books there. Go and check them out. That's on up.school.io. Guys, thank you so much for joining me today. You know, if you want to contact me, the best way to contact me is through Upschool, or if you want to leave a comment on any of my videos here on YouTube. You know, if you want to follow the progress of being a lifestyle entrepreneur, you want to get insights on a daily basis, go and check out my YouTube channel. Subscribe to my YouTube channel, because every day I will publish a video diary of my progress as a lifestyle entrepreneur, plus share with you tips as well as book reviews, as what I've shared with you today, webinars on my channel. It's all free, and I look forward to interacting with you on the channel here on YouTube. Or if you want to go to Upschool, send me an email. I'll check you out later on. Thank you so much. I will be here next week, next Wednesday, for more. Hopefully you will join me then. Thank you so much, guys. Have a great week. Have a great day. I'll see you on Wednesday.